It's both at once. Yes, the presentation is for this gentleman just around the, well, this is a presentation, the tour is around the back. I forgot which was which. Okay, I think we're good. We have a couple things going on at once today. I'm going to speak a little louder than usual. I'll be right back. And now, from the Royal Theatre, we're proud to present Daniel Gohstand, photographer, visualist, entrepreneur, drummer, 5-time winner of the Indy 500, 4th astronaut on the moon, 3-time winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, 6-time winner of the Tour de France, and of course, 4-time winner of the Pillsbury Bake Off, Daniel Gohstand. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. That's Jim. Thank you, very generous on your part, Jim. Thank you very much. That's my personal assistant and announcer. He travels with me explicitly to announce me at any event, dining hall, whatever it is. My name is Daniel Gohstand. I'm a documentary photographer. I'm from San Francisco originally, but I've resided in Guatemala and other parts of Central America for about 10 years. My concentration is on portraying other cultures, communicating something deep and personal and meaningful in their spirit, communicating that through this art form. I encourage you all to do the same. I'm going to share with you some concepts that I follow in my shooting and my presentation, but of course follow your own heart. See how it is that you can portray the things that you love, how you can communicate those things. There are no hard and fast rules overall. A lot of it's very subjective, but I'm going to share some tips with you, and today we have a lot to get through. This is my last lecture. Very sad. I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate you all coming, all the kind words that people have shared with me as I've passed through the ship. I sure appreciate that. Thank you so much. We're going to cover a lot of territory very quickly today. We have about 45 minutes to cover the entire photographic world. We're going to be a little hard-pressed, but we're going to do it anyway. I'm going to go through some alternate photographic means as well. Right now, let's get caught up on some business. People have asked me a couple of questions over the last days that I didn't want to ignore. I'm just going to run this and we'll go one by one on some aspects that people have been curious about. Okay, first we have this slide, which is a listing of apps. We won't spend too much time on this because we've spoken of it before. But these are my favorites. Again, there are a million of them. I think there are 18 billion apps in the world, an app for just about anything. If you enjoy cooking, if you enjoy mechanics, if you enjoy astronomy, whatever it is, there'll be something to aid you in that very specifically as well. So the things that we've spoken of, if you want more detail, please see me anytime on the ship. I'm happy to speak with you. We'll also have a little get-together today at 4 o'clock up in the solarium bar. So please bring your cameras, and if there's anything I can do as far as follow-up to help you more specifically with technical or compositional issues, please come on up. It'd be a pleasure to see you. We had a great group the other day. I'll show you some slides of that as well. Today we're going to walk around the ship quickly. We'll have about an hour. We're going to walk around, try some shooting, see what works inside and out, and I'm sure it'll be a good time. So these are 50 of my favorites, essentially 45 or so. I want to call your attention again. I'm going to go very quickly today, but we're covering a lot of territory. If you have to cut to the quick, I'm going to read it down and tell you my thoughts on the matter. Facebook, some people scorn it nowadays. Your kids will laugh at you, but that's okay. What do they know? It's still the most versatile overall. It encompasses so much. You can group photos, great way to promote, good for business, good for personal use. It's really the easiest. If you have to learn one, Facebook's the one to learn. About 1.8 billion people on it. So about a quarter of the globe is on it. Another reason why it's really valuable. YouTube, extremely helpful. You can find virtually anything on there. For communication, Skype, WhatsApp, very useful. Those are the primary ones. Storage, I'm going to gloss over that. Maps.me is one that a lot of These shore excursions takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. You can program it ahead of time, download the local map while you have Wi-Fi, and then when you hit shore, you'll be all ready to go. It uses the phone's built-in compass to orient you correctly as well. So there's very little guesswork. It will track your progress so you can star places that you'd like to return to. Real-time server, and got me back to the ship on time. I found this for photo editing, Camera Plus, excellent. It allows you to use your iPhone, and I'll find ones for Android as well, but it allows you manual control of your iPhone, which is very nice. So full exposure, color balance, all kinds of things that you'd have in your SLR, you can now use in your phone, much better than what's built in, which gives you very little control. And a thing I thought of as well, flashlight. LED torch it's called, but there are a million of them. That allows you to use your phone's light as a flashlight. Very useful. Very useful indeed. Check that one out. And of course on board, Royal IQ, which will keep you in touch with everything that's happening. A fun one too is this Facetune, which is a little corny but excellent. You can smooth skin very quickly, make yourselves even more beautiful. We're going to keep moving on now. Keep this rolling at a good pace today. This is a histogram. I'm going to go over this in 2 words or less. Well, it'll be more than 2, but not a whole lot more. A gentleman, I think Mickey, I believe, in the back, had asked about the histogram. Just to illustrate this a little bit, histogram essentially, again, is a graph rendering of your exposure. Ideally, you'd like it to reside somewhere in the middle. This shows you how it might look in a dark subject. All the items will be pulled to the right in a light subject. This helps you judge where things are getting blown out or where your shadows are getting blocked up. It's essentially a mathematical representation of your exposure. Again, these are very general. If you have further questions, please let me know. Can't possibly do it this amount of time, but we're going to do it anyway. This is Maps.me, as I was saying. Again, tracks your progress, orients you. I would recommend when you first arrive on shore from a shore, to begin a shore excursion, you can star that location, perhaps where the bus is or where you rented the bicycle. Star that location. You can easily return to that location and not miss the sailing. Gave me a lot of comfort. This is fantastic also. This is a compass, which allows you also, if there is, for some reason, no GPS, although it does have that built in. There's also a built-in light, very useful for a lot of things. Digital compass. All of these were on the list, so please, if you'd like the list, I'll send that to you. Here's the flashlight. It allows not only variation of intensity, but variation of color. This is a manual control, again. Allows you exposure control, color control, all kinds of things, very versatile. This is my assistant, Kelly. Thank you, Kelly, for letting me share this. What an amazing thing nowadays. Here I am on a beautiful, beautiful ship in the middle of the Atlantic, and I can still communicate with my assistant in California regarding business, sitting there from a sun chair on deck while we still maintain things back home. Amazing technology nowadays that we can be so far apart but still keep in touch. This was interesting to me. Someone has asked the other day why, I don't know if you're here at the other lecture, but someone had asked why the graves in the town Santa Maria de Jesus, living in Guatemala, there's a small indigenous town there, Santa Maria de Jesus. Part of my proceeds go to support that town. They're lovely, kind, humble. And some people had asked why they paint the tombs there. And my feeling was it was just this general feeling of joy and color, like their huipiles, like their dress, very colorful. But I was able to Facebook message my friends in Santa Maria de Jesus, a small town, you know, on a volcano in the middle of Guatemala, and ask them why this is. To me, it still kind of boggles my mind that I was able to do that. And they kind of reiterated what I said. They also said that their loved ones are given essentially 24 hours to visit the living during this period, during the Day of the Dead. That's something we touched upon in the Day of the Dead lecture. Amazing technology that you can keep in touch with people all over the world. And again, this is a small town, but almost anywhere in the world now, there'll be a Wi-Fi cafe where you can keep in touch. On your shore excursions, track down a Wi-Fi cafe. You can buy a coffee or something, connect that way. Here's a gentleman. I met these folks up on board the other day. Now we'll get into some alternative means. This is a GoPro on a stick. You might have seen this. I have one from years ago that I used. Speaking of alternate ways of shooting, this is great. Comes with a little remote as well. It's an extremely wide angle, and they're two backs. So one is open so that it still lets in sound. That's my preference. But underwater, there's a waterproof back as well. Very versatile. You can use it for selfies and such. Very wide angle of view. Often overused. I see a lot of people shooting this on shore. That's great. Again, if that's your style, that's fantastic too. But it's an extremely wide angle of view, and it can, I don't know, I think it has its place and balance with a real camera. This is great. This is Osmo. This is by DJI, the same people who make the drones, which I'll show you. This thing's amazing. This has a gimbal built in, which means that you have no motion, no shaking when you shoot. This is like the steady cams of old, which used to be this large, invented in the 70s, I believe. It's now this small for about $300. Keeps your cell phone and other cameras completely stable. It's the same type of technology that they use in their drones. Again, amazing footage on the drones. I'll show you a few clips. I'm by no means the world's greatest drone pilot, but I've learned a lot in a couple of months. I use it a lot in Guatemala, where we have quite a few processions and other events. I don't necessarily recommend flying it over a crowd of people, but I do. Wonderful technology. The stability is amazing, very versatile, small, well worth having something like this. There are a number of ways to go. I'm just going to give you a quick overview. This gentleman, whose name I forget, forgive me, let me see if I can get it here. Alex, I think, but I'm terrible with names. But he is part of the film crew. It is Alex. I surprised myself. I'm ahead of myself. He's part of a promotional marketing crew that's here on board shooting for the ship. And he was kind enough to share with me what he does. So he has here on the railing on a little mount a 360-degree camera, and I really want to show you this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go through the slideshow, then we're going to come back and look at footage. It'll be easier for me to do that. But this is that camera. This shoots in 360, and that's hard to describe, but I'm going to show the little video from that in just a moment. Another spherical camera that has two lenses and shoots in 360. This is some, these are images from Santa Maria de Jesus using the GoPro. Very wide angle of view. Again, I'm just using this, excuse me, but this is great because otherwise you're amongst the crowd. It can be very hard to get an angle, especially when these ondas, these floats, are, you know, probably 10, 12 feet tall. This is a great way to get above, a great way in a crowd to get above. I try to watch who's behind me so I'm not blocking their shot, but sometimes it's just a free-for-all. A couple more from that. These are a number of the processions in Guatemala. Great angle. This can be used for both photography and video. Nice time of day. You know, they call it the golden hour, but this last period just before sunset. But also remember, after sunset as well, we found this the other day, hang out for 20 minutes or so because you can balance the foreground with the sky. The sky retains this incredible deep dark blue. So please, the sunset is not the end of the day photographically. There's quite a bit more to come. Again, very wide angle. Excuse me, going through the farms in Santa Maria de Jesus. One of the masses there, Padre Hugo, kind enough to let me shoot inside, very kind of him, very generous. But also this is very unobtrusive. You know, it's a small camera. Now these are the drones which I'll show you as well. This is made by DJI. This is the Phantom 4, which replaces the one that I have, the Phantom 3. A lot of these things, you know, I really believe on concentrating on pure photography, communicating things directly. I use the Canons for that. I have the 5D3. The 5D4 is out. The quality of the file is the most important thing to me. We've also the speed, the immediacy of the shot. This kind of carte-bresson concept of capturing the moment. Always being attentive, always being ready. However, I have to say, some of these gizmos are amazing, and primarily for me, the drone. I didn't know that I like it so much, but you can learn to fly these in short order. If you know nothing about remote control, it's no problem. It orients itself through GPS, uses 4 blades to keep it balanced. If you don't touch it, it functions as a helicopter and maintains its position. It's amazing, and it transmits through RC the feed onto your iPad or phone so that you can view it in real time. The distance now, I think the range is a mile or 2. It's amazing. Obstructions affect it a lot, but if you get up above, incredible range, and I'll show you some footage on that as well. These are just amazing. Now, there are a lot of laws, even in Guatemala now, they've outlawed them, so not that that deters me, but you really have to watch the laws because in some place they are outlawed. Here are some stills from that. This is Volcán de Fuego in eruption, which it often is. This I love. Not only can you point it ahead and get great video that way, but pointing down, I think, gives you these very interesting compositions in themselves. This is a church in Santa Maria de Jesus, but these kinds of graphs there and the way things are laid out, the linearity to the composition, amazing stuff. You could experiment with that all day. In fact, I can fly this from my roof in Antigua, Guatemala. I get up, we have no obstructions. I found I can pass the entire town just sitting on the roof drinking a cup of coffee. Who would have thought this a few years ago where you'd have to hire a helicopter for, I don't know, thousands of dollars an hour and do the same thing. This is very high resolution, 4K video, pretty good photographs, not fantastic, but I believe they're about 8 megapixel. Amazing stuff. Again, still of the front of the church. This was really rewarding too because the town had never seen it, nor had I seen their own town from these angles. So I shared these on Facebook and got quite a reaction. They were the most popular shots I had on Facebook for quite a while. It's just an entirely different perspective. Very beautiful. Sometimes I'll just scan over with a camera pointing downward. Independence Day in Guatemala in front of the cathedral. This is sunset the other night. Let me pause this for just a second. So, a lot of people gather at the back of the ship for sunset, as they should. Amazing. I'm not looking for other things. I'm just checking my notes on this. Now, all kinds of changing forms as it changes there. Always look for things that are a little bit different. This, I thought this reflection was interesting. This staircase kind of going into the sky. The orange. Look around as well. The sunset's fantastic. There may be other things. The changing light. Watch your exposure. I usually underexpose just a little bit. This is a technique I use, which I find very interesting. I had the great pleasure of sharing this with Pat and Dennis the other day, back there shooting, some folks that were in the class. I just do this sometimes rotating the camera on a longer exposure. Just something fun. Gives you very interesting streaking. We make sails now. I invented a system to do large-scale imaging for sails for sailboats. So the quality of the image is very important, but I'm also thinking about things that just have texture that we might be able to drop into the background. So rotating the camera, longer exposure, perhaps a half of a second. Very interesting. Oftentimes the object that's in the middle will be extremely sharp and everything else swirls around it. Great fun stuff. People think I'm nuts, but that's okay. Again, as it's getting darker, bringing in the moon. And here is where we really, again, some streaking from the lights. Here's where you really need the manual exposure to control it. And as the sun is setting and things are getting darker, we're just following it, opening it up, either by opening up the aperture, or in this case, usually using a longer shutter speed. We're kind of tracking it as it goes, opening every few minutes, checking our results. Actually, Pat and I did this together. Pat's in the front row. Thank you for coming, Pat. We had a great time. Again, some other things. But this was so fun, you know, just seeing the exposure and just tracking it as it goes. Again, some other things I noticed in the reflections I thought very interesting. This I thought was particularly interesting. Silhouettes, great. You don't necessarily have to bring in detail into every object. You can use it as a silhouette, have it more just form-based. Hey, there you are. One of our best students, amazing. Over 2 days, here's our group. 2 days, she's a complete master. I think RCL is going to kick me off and put her in place. And here's our new custom shirt. This is not really available, although you could, which is I shoot manual. Yes, I know it should be manually, but it's okay as a noun too. This is what I really am encouraging people to do. Shoot on manual. This gives you complete control over the camera rather than letting it just do its thing. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes I'll put it on aperture priority, set my aperture, my f-stop, let the camera determine a shutter speed. Oftentimes this will work in the street, but if you really want to control the camera, experiment on the M, on manual, and see what you can really create, because it's going to give you a lot more latitude. It really puts you in control, and it also gives you a starting point, a correct point from which you can jump off. Okay, that was a bit of a whirlwind there. I want to show you this here. Hopefully we'll get a feed in here. Let's see what we can do. Then I'll show you some videos. This is amazing to me. Now, this is the 360 camera here as used on Harmony of the Seas. Let's see what we get.
G'day guys, we are on board Harmony of the Seas, but we are...
So this is a 360 view.
by
So
far
I can actually,
I've seen on the ship.
you can actually pan this in real time. Look at this. I'm bowled over by this. You can actually pan in 360. I think it's a 240 view top and bottom, or 360 in this dimension. This is one of the Harmony of the Seas promotional video.
Off to my left over here, you'll see the Mediterranean Sea. Guys, this is 360 degrees, so you can spin your
So as he's saying,
anywhere around here 360 degrees.
anything that he's referring to on the horizon.
When you look dead in front of me, you can see the perfect
You
storm.
can even look down here.
Lights streaming down the ship. Down off to my left, you can see the jacuzzi down there. Everyone's just chilling out and having a great time.
This is a great, this can be used for so many things. Obviously, it's a real asset here to the ship and their promotion, but for all kinds of things, for real estate, for really events, for virtually anything. Very interesting stuff. And again, it doesn't work on every browser. It does not work on Safari, I found. But on Chrome, it does work, and it allows you to go 360-degree view for sports, all kinds of things. I thought that was pretty amazing. I was just looking into that last night, actually. Fun stuff. I'm going to show you now a few of the uses for the GoPro. Then I'll show you, and then some uses for the Phantom. And then we can look at some gadgets. And then if we have time, I have some images from Cuba. And since you're rather a captive audience, I'll share those with you. This is a GoPro. Let me start with this one. This is at the Pride Parade in San Francisco. Amazing stuff. This is just going down this row of people. I think there are 1 million people there this year. I just love the diversity, getting in close to people. I'll leave that on. I love always this idea of getting very close to your subjects, but trying not to intrude. That's true on the big camera as well with the 16 millimeter. Pretty enthusiastic crowd. This is San Francisco's Pride Parade. It was an especially big one. Now there's no stabilization, so it is jittering and such, but to me, what the heck? It's part of the activity, part of the action. Just walking alongside. They gratefully give me press credentials. Really nice access, looking back on the crowd. A lot of my time is spent shooting back on the crowd, often with a 70 to 200, cutting in on people. Very interesting. Amazing faces. People from all over the globe. You can later edit this, of course, but I rarely have time, so I run most of my video raw, which purists would scorn, but there's only so much time in one's life. Sadly. There we go. Very fun stuff, and a great way to capture this. Of course, I'm shooting the Canons as well for the other stuff, but great way to get a good overview. Here's one I love from Santa Maria de Jesus, from one of the masses. Again, you would normally fade this in and cut front and back, but just to give you an idea. Some of the most beautiful times of my life spent in this community. Again, Padre Hugo bearing with me on this stuff. Thank you, Padre. Of course, you need to be discreet with these things. I'm blessed to have a little bit of leeway in the community. They've gotten used to this hippie gringo guy hanging around. It's a great, nice wide angle though, and very close, and the camera's so small that it's not too distracting. Later you can edit these clips together as well, but again, just for time's sake, shooting it raw. That's the use of the GoPro, and I want to show you now, please, we're going to go to the Phantom. Here's some favorites of mine. Now, there's no audio on the Phantom because the blades itself create a lot of noise, so you'd want to blend that with music or something. But hovering here, these are the ondas during a lot of the celebrations. You can bring it in quite close. You have to be careful, but bring it in quite close. And I like putting things in perspective. This is true as well when I'm shooting with my Canons. I like the idea of shooting detail, coming in close, doing some wide shots, kind of as a Eugene Smith kind of photo story, giving an overview of things, looking at the detail, and every range in between. Very smooth with the stabilization, no movement at all. The maximum height is 500 meters. But that's software control. People have defeated that and flown them much higher than that still. I wanted to bring one on the ship to show you, but that's not allowed for obvious reasons. It can be very difficult flying it. Excuse me. Let's try another one here. Just amazing, you know, it's not that I'm that experienced with the drone, but it's not that difficult to learn, and the angles are just, to me, really amazing. Volcán de Agua. It's good to have someone with you to spot, because some of these cables and things you can't really see on the screen, and you do need to be careful. But I generally find what the highest point is in the area, whether it's a tree, cable, what have you, and as long as you maintain that and a fly above that, or off in the church, of course you'll have no problems. I'll show you one more here from in Antigua. Yeah, let me show you this one. This is actually just shot from my roof. You know, again, the texture in these towns is amazing. When you get 10 feet up, it's a whole different world. Very smooth. The flight time is limited. You have about 15 minutes per battery, really, before you have to return, because the total time is maybe 22 minutes. And I push my luck sometimes, you know. You want to make sure that you leave, I'd say, about 30% on the battery to return, so that you're not stressed out trying to get it back. That can be really stressful, especially if you're in a crowd. This is Escuela de Cristo, one of the churches nearby, my favorite little park. And this is all shot from my roof, you know. You can do this in your pajamas. Early time of day. Now, while that's playing in the background, once when I was new to this, we went to shoot the volcano that's nearby with a friend of mine. I hadn't flown it very much, and he had to leave, so I flew it myself. It has a couple of modes where it will return or just lower itself if it loses signal. So I was flying it by myself, shooting the volcano. I thought, this is great, this is fantastic. The sun was rising, this is neat, into the blackness. You couldn't even see it anymore by sight. And all of a sudden, I lost signal. The screen started to flicker, losing signal, it went black, lost the signal completely. Called my friend in a panic and said, oh my gosh, I've lost it. It's $1,500. I just got the thing. I thought, oh my gosh, that's it. Rather in a panic, he said, don't worry, Dan, okay, I'll come back. He had dropped his kids off at school. He rushed back, and he is extremely sharp. Thank you, Carlos Verano in Antigua. He's very sharp at these kinds of things. He grabbed the pad, he overlaid Google Maps to see where it had stopped, where it had landed. I thought it would come back to me if it lost signal. Turns out I had it in the mode where it would lower itself. I didn't realize that, being new to it. He was able to overlay Google Maps. I said, we only have about 10% battery left, Carlos. Whatever we're going to do, we have to do it now, because in a moment we're going to lose our signal. We won't have any communication at all. Overlaid the maps. He found that it was inside the town itself, a town similar to this. Hopped in his little car, drove into the town, drove slowly to where he thought it was, and all of a sudden, amazing, boom, the feed pops up on the screen again. So we know that we're back in close range. We're seeing the video feed. And what we're seeing is just a couple of colored windows, nondescript colored windows. So we walk around this town, approximately where we think it is, asking the people in the town, do you know what this, have you ever seen this window? It's just showing a small portion. Finally, a gentleman comes out, hopping on his motorcycle. I say, hey, do you know where this is? And he stops for a second. His wife is there. I said, oh, yeah, I think that's in the backyard. We run into the guy's backyard, and sure enough, up on his tin roof, the drone's just sitting there. It had landed itself straight down safely. Amazing. So you have to be careful. We were apparently near a very powerful radio tower, and it cut out the signal. But be sure you have it on the mode where it will return if it loses signal, or you'll be rushing through small towns asking people if they've seen windows like we were. So great stuff. This is another, I think, a very useful tool. Not difficult to learn how to fly. Just remember there are certain laws now that prohibit it in a lot of areas. So you have to be conscious of that. But what a great tool, and again, it does not take much to learn this. We can now either go into the cube of things. I'm going to show you, actually, let me show you a couple of things. Let's leave this up here for beauty's sake. I want to show you a couple of things that I keep in my tool bag that are really, I think, very useful. Again, the SLR, definitely the way to go. Some people love the rangefinders like the Leicas, great little cameras as well for street shooting, very discreet. This is my tool of choice though. This is the Canon 5D3. Now the 5D4 is out. There are myriad of models. Nikon also great. Sony makes some great ones. It's all personal preference. I shot Nikon when I shot film. Still have a couple of their bodies. FE2, the best camera ever made in my estimation. This is fantastic though. This is very wide angle, 16 to 35. Allows me to get in very tight on subjects. Again, I'm always balancing that with being very respectful, delicate, and gentle. But it gives me, I hope, compositions that are very powerful and unique and really communicate something much more personal than shooting from across the room with a long lens. People sometimes say, oh, I shoot from the... It's a very different dynamic. The shot looks different. Your interaction with the subjects is different. Again, always delicate, always respectful, but there's a balance there where you can capture things that are really meaningful and powerful. Put this here really quick without dropping it. Okay, let me show you what I have in my little tool bag. Selfie stick. Don't take many of them, but pretty useful. Gives you a nice high angle. That's good. You want to avoid shooting from down below generally. Gives you a nicer angle. Always useful. This one, $5 there in Malaga. Can't beat that. Cases. This is just a soft neoprene case. I'm sorry I don't know the maker. But these are great, and there are a number of reasons. This keeps it from bangs and bruises and scratches and things going through doorways. Also helps with dust. This is my super special photographic bag. 99 cents at the dollar store. but these are great. Keeps the dust out, and another thing is that there are tales now of people coming up, and they have learned, not hard to do, you push the button, you know, and take the lens off the camera. If you're not careful, like I'm not being right now with my baby. By the way, if you're changing lenses, always turn the camera off first. If not, it's activated and it's just sucking in dust like there's no tomorrow. Very bad for the sensor over time, especially in dusty environments. You can send it into the company. There are camera stores that would do it, but I'd recommend sending it into the manufacturer. At least it's the responsibility. Canon has a CPS, Canon Professional Services Program, where they'll do this a couple times a year for $100 worth every penny. Don't forget that sensor's shooting everything that you shoot for years, and dust builds up on it, which means a lot of retouching later. You can save yourself a lot of trouble by just having the sensor professionally clean. Don't do it yourself. I once did that in a panic in Nicaragua. I called a friend back home. Not a great experience. Scratched the glass over the sensor. Don't do it. Only in emergencies. There's a highly toxic and flammable liquid that you can use for this, made by PEC 12 and some special swaths, but I don't recommend it unless, like I was, you're really in a remote spot where you can't do anything else. Turn the camera off, that way it's not activated before you pop the lens off. Keep the camera down, keep it away from dust, shelter it as much as you can to keep things from falling in there and dust from being sucked in. But the big advantage of one of these cases, even this 99-cent bag, is that people will come up and they'll just pop the lens off if you're not watching and run away with the lens. At least if you have it in the bag, it makes it much more difficult to do that. I just put the bag over it, go down. It's my super special, highly secretive photo techniques for professionals only. Tie that up, and now it's very hard to do that. You can't pop the lens off and run. It also keeps it very clean from dust and such. Of course, thank you. This is a great little tool. This is a small reflector. Look how small that is. I put a little hook on there, put it on my belt loop, put it on my camera bag. Pop this out. Pops out like this. There are many different ones. There are white ones that you can use. If this were the sun, a white one you would use between the sun and the subject, just as a diffuser. It gives you a very nice soft light. If you're walking around town and you see umbrellas, a number of these cafes have white umbrellas. What a great diffuser. You can put your loved one under the umbrella. Nice soft light, very gentle on the skin, looks beautiful. This has a gold side and a silver. Silver being a little bit more powerful. Gold being a little softer. It can make skin look a little off though. I tend to use this, but it can make people squint. But this is great. You kind of need a second person for this. You're bouncing the light just as you would a mirror from the sun onto your subject, keeping it a little high, shooting it down just a little bit. Great way to use it. I never use flash. I can't tell what it's going to do. It can be very harsh. Sometimes this fill, you know, there are caveats to all these things, but rarely do I use it. With this, I can see in real time exactly how it's affecting my subject, exactly what my subject looks like, and then you just, when you're done, twist it up, ready to go. Small, light, inexpensive, great little tool. What else do we have back here? This is great. A couple last things, and then we'll get on with a couple others. I brought everything I had packed. This is a little cover for a laptop. This is great in the sun, so really useful on the ship. It just goes over your screen and acts as a shade. So very useful in the sunlight, where it can be very difficult to see any screen. Again, I try to go with things that don't weigh a lot, don't take up a lot of space in my bag. Very small, very useful. And an iPad. A lot of you are shooting with this. All the principles we spoke of on the cell phone pretty much translate into the pad as well. This has a little keyboard that attaches with magnets. Pops right off, but very useful. Nice little separate keyboard so you don't need to use the screen. And again, the greatest thing, very high-end photographic tool. I'm selling these for $198 after the show. Like one? These Ziploc bag. Very useful. Great against salt water. Is really bad for the camera. Dust, things like that. Very useful. I'm going to give this also a good thing. I'm pretty security conscious when I travel. I go to some places that are, well, it's not as much of an issue on the ship. Boy, it's nice to let your guard down and know that things are taken care of and there are no worries when you're carrying this kind of gear. But at other places, it's more of an issue. On your shore excursions or just some places you might travel, it's good to be aware. And this is a great strap. The advantage of this is made by PackSafe, I believe it's called PackSafe. Big advantage is that this has a metal cable in the strap. There are a lot of tales of thieves coming up with a razor, slashing the strap when you're not watching, which is very easy to do. It's just fiber, boom, and taking off. It can happen in a second if you let your guard down. This has a metal cable in the strap, so it's very difficult to get through it. You really have to go after it. It's not particularly comfortable, though, I must say, hence I use these seatbelt pads to cushion it. Otherwise, it can be really hard on your neck. As far as how you carry it, it's up to you. A lot of things to jostle. You generally do want to keep it in front of you. If you carry it like this, so I'm always concerned if someone does try to take it, that can really not be good on your neck. I generally carry it like this. If I don't have it in my hand, you have a greater portion of your body there, so if someone does try to do that, it's safer. I wouldn't carry it like this. A lot of people do. These are, again, personal preference. This is kind of nice if I'm hanging out and I know I'm in a safe environment. It's very comfortable. But in the street, very easy to pull this off and take powder. If you're really shooting, though, this is really, in my opinion, how you doing? All right. I'm doing all right up here. This is really the way that it should be held, in my opinion. Always in your hand, always ready, your fingers on the trigger. I tap it occasionally just to keep the meter activated. Anything that you can do to cut down on the amount of time to capture things that are happening. That's why they call them moments. You really need to be ready. I even keep it up here around chest level so that I can shoot very, very quickly. Yeah, that's essential. So if I'm walking in the street, always like this, always ready, finger on the trigger at all times. This concept of really being in the moment, the immediacy of things, the motion of things, the way in which things and people interact, the compositions, the dynamic, that's really what photography is about for me. That combined with heart, with soul, and the spirit of people, that's what keeps me really just fascinated by this as an art form and motivated to do the best work I can. That's kind of an overview. I think those are the main things that I use to make my life photographically better. And I think that, how are we looking here? We have just a few minutes. Yeah, we covered a lot of territory in a short time, but that was very good, I think, to get us. Oh, and actually, I'm going to do this very quickly. We're not able to dim the lights, apparently. I'm sorry about that, but that's okay. It still is going to look great. I'm going to hit this really quick. How many minutes here? I think this is 5 minutes. That will leave us about 5 minutes for some thank yous, which I really want to give, and some questions. Let's take a look. So I was in Cuba recently. Very interesting, different scenario, great country, wonderful people, interesting culture. However, there's virtually no internet available there. The only internet is through a few five-star hotels, so you'll see big groups of people, 100 people outside with their cell phones, but both Cubans and people that are visiting, tapping into the Wi-Fi network, which is very limited, and also it's limited as to what you can load there. But you'll see huge groups of people using these hotels' Wi-Fi. It really makes you adapt. Okay, good. It really makes you adapt to the situation. You can't upload a lot there. You have to learn how to do things very briefly. Composing notes ahead of time so you can hot copy and paste them into a singular email, hit it in one fell swoop because the internet goes off and on. So it's interesting how to use these things. Some of the things I discussed, not too accessible there. It's good to have some apps in your repertoire because some will work, some will not. Skype might work, Facebook may not, all kinds of different things. Good to have a couple apps in your disposal. I'm going to show you a little bit of my street shooting there. This was just in an afternoon, a few hours walking around near the Capitol building there in Havana. Again, just trying to concentrate on street composition. Let's take a look. walking the streets and even areas they tell you, oh, you shouldn't go there. That's, you know, in my estimation, where you should go. And just people are very receptive when you get to know them, if you approach them delicately. I had a wonderful time. They're very interesting, the folks. And I hope, again, communicating something sincere and not contrived about the folks there in life there, which is very difficult. They tell me that themselves. It's hard here. It's something I heard all the time, and it is hard. You know, but the people have such a spirit, and it's a joy to just create and try to communicate that through this art form. So I want to kind of sum up by saying thank you all so much. So many of you have come up to me and had such kind words for these presentations, and that's really a joy because sharing an art that I'm so enthusiastic about, that's such a passion for me. If you've taken anything out of that, I really appreciate that, and I encourage you to just use that as a jumping off point for your own creativity. Of course, thanks to RCL and the amazing crew here who supported these presentations, great staff. And please, if you've enjoyed them, let them know. Hopefully they'll have me back. If you haven't enjoyed them, don't say a word, please. And no, it's really been a joy. Thank you all so much. And please, are there any quick questions before we go? Yes, sir.
Did you film the upscale sections of Cuba also?
A little bit. I was in Havana Vieja also, which is a little bit more upscale. I shot there a little bit, but there's so many people, there's so many tourists, that I found if you get outside of these areas a little bit, you're on the shore excursions as well, be careful and of course listen to the advice of the, excuse me, the staff. But, you know, that's where the challenge comes in. You know, it's much more authentic, and people don't see as many tourists coming through, so for them it's more interesting as well.
That looks like every building is in disrepair.
Yes, things are in great disrepair there. They've been hit hard, I have to say. It's very moving to see. Yeah, it really, you know, it is on a lot of levels very sad. But, you know, balancing that is this great spirit of strength and rejuvenation. And of course, you know, I don't want to get political, but I do hope that it's a better time for everybody and that we have, you know, improved relationships in the world and that they are given further opportunity because they really are struggling. But again, to communicate the spirit with which they fight, that's the real joy. And I try to approach things as they are, you know, and just appreciate what they are and communicate that through my work. Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
How did you actually travel to Cuba?
Well, we did it through a cultural exchange. You know, things are going to change, I think, over the upcoming months, so it's a lot easier. But now we did it through a cultural exchange. But I always travel independently as well. I like that. I'm not worried about, of course, it's great traveling with a loved one. I don't have anyone who'll travel with me. So kind of by ipso facto, I travel alone. What else am I going to do? They put out an ad on Craigslist or something. But photographically, I like it. It frees me up. I'm not concerned about someone else's schedule or something. It allows me to really concentrate on what I'm doing. But I know a lot of wonderful couples as well who travel very well artistically. So we each find our way. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Could you use a drone in Cuba? Excellent question. I'm glad I researched this ahead of time. Absolutely not. They confiscated at the airport. They're very concerned about anything that uses Wi-Fi or anything like this. I traveled with several hard drives for backup purposes and because I wanted to bring them on this cruise. And they were concerned that those were Wi-Fi or had some kind of remote capability. So they're very protective of that and they confiscate them at the airport. Will you get them back? Maybe. Depends who's on duty that day. So no, unfortunately you can't, but boy, would that be great. Wouldn't that be a great country to shoot that way? I did see some footage online. They allowed one local crew who had built their own drone. You know, they're very resourceful. They really don't have things available there, but they had built their own drone and had flown it there, and they had gotten permission from the government to do so. Amazing footage. I mean, visually, it's an incredible country. So I wish I had been able to, but couldn't pull it off. Maybe later. And also, sneaking one in or something, I wouldn't do it. They're going to see you flying, and you'll be in trouble. I wouldn't test the waters there. Yeah, big time. Better follow the rules. But very interesting. Yes, ma'am. And then I'll come right to you.
Mary, my name.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. You mentioned about leaving your camera
question. If you're keeping my technique of constantly tapping the button to keep it live so that it can be more instantaneous, are you draining your battery that way, and how long will the battery last? It's a very good question, and it will vary from camera to camera. But I have the flexibility on the Canon that with one of these batteries I can shoot diligently for 10 hours or so. You know, it's really amazing to me. So it doesn't affect it that much. It's just keeping the meter live, you know, keeping the LCD live. So it's not draining it too much. You can also let it go into sleep mode, which you can probably control. The camera will go into sleep mode after a period which you set. Not too bad either. It doesn't take too long to activate it. So if you find your camera's draining it more quickly, you could certainly use that route. Maybe have it go into sleep mode after a few minutes though, so that it's not constantly going into sleep and you need to reactivate. Again, it doesn't take long to tap it to wake it, but every nanosecond counts in photography. So I think it's well worth using this technique, or keeping it to a mode where it never goes into a sleep mode. But balance that also of your camera's ability to retain charge. I'll come right there, and yes, sir. The question's about drones and whether it's best to get one that has a built-in camera devoted to it, or one that uses the GoPro. Like I showed you, a lot of those will accept the GoPro. I like the ones with the built-in camera. I find the angle's better, has less fall off. I think the glass is better. The GoPros are great for a lot of things. Tiny little sensor though. And also I've had a lot of problems with connectivity with the GoPro. So I personally like the DJI comes with built-in cameras, and a lot of them do now, devoted to that device. You can go either way. I would get something with a built-in camera. I think it's better glass and a better camera overall. Yes, ma'am. The question is, are we okay on time, by the way? Let me ask really quick. We all right? Okay, we're all good. How humidity affects cameras, it's a good question, not good for it. That's why simple things like the Ziplocs and I don't use waterproof cases or bags very much because I find it very hard to shoot with them. But a Ziploc goes a long way. One thing I've noticed with that, and this is why I was trying to clean my sensor in Nicaragua, it was very humid, and the sensor was building little rings on it, not dirt, but actually humidity rings, which I had to try to clean off. So it can have great effect, especially salt water. I try to protect it from that as much as possible. Even here on the ship, I have everything stored in Ziploc bags and in drawers and things and in cases to try to protect it from that. You don't really notice, but with time, especially again in saltwater, with our sail project, SAIL, printing these huge sails for boats, I'm on boats a lot, small boats, and so this really becomes an issue. Another thing I use, they have for $25, you can get these dry bags that sailors use. It's just a nylon bag, and it spins up, you seal it, much like a big Ziploc, but it'll keep out, a great deal of humidity, or travel also with little packets of desiccant that you can toss in there to absorb it. I'd fight that battle as much as you can. Definitely not good for it, and definitely can have an effect on it. Some cameras are sealed better than others, but no matter what they say, they're not sealed that well. But I do travel with this little Olympus. Excuse me. These are just a couple $100 now, but gosh, are they great, Waterproof to 30 feet. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Waterproof to 30 feet, completely dust-proof. I once fell like this, smashing it into the ground. It bounced right back, no problems. This is a great way to not subject your real equipment to such conditions. So definitely worth a couple $100 too to travel with something that you don't need to be so concerned about. So that's another great little tool for that. This one's by Olympus, but there are a number of different manufacturers for that. Yes, sir. I'll get the gentleman in the black shirt first. Thank you for that. Question is, of all the places I've traveled, what has been the most interesting spot? For me, and of course this is very personal, but for me, Guatemala is the greatest country on earth to shoot. I love the people. very humble, very kind. I'm very proud and very humble to have built up a nice friendship with this community there. We work with them closely to bring medical aid, so I do feel, I wanted to return something to these people who've been so open toward me. That's very important to always keep that in mind. And, it's what's kept me there for 7 years or so. It's just this genuineness, this humility, the faces, the expressions, the colors, the beauty of the countryside. I've never had a problem there at all. There's just something very humble and very heartfelt about the culture there. And they're very open to photography. That will vary from culture to culture. I've shot in other places in the world, also fantastic, but very hard to shoot there because of their histories and their take on it. A lot of countries in Central America, South America, Mexico, you'll find much more open to this concept. Families love it, it's part of the culture. So they're much more receptive to it, and admittedly that makes things a little easier. But again, I've taken the time also to try to let them know who I am and what I'm about, so that they're not put off by the concept of my being there and creating. And now that they're so inviting, and I feel really, again, honored to be kind of part of the community there, it's just something very deep and powerful for me. Thank you for that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've not used the Sonys, to be honest, but someone have asked people that. The question is the Sonys versus the Canons, the full frame cameras. Full frame for me is always the way to go. The Sony I have not played with, but full frame is important to me, meaning that whatever, in the end, in basic terms, whatever lens I put on this camera is what it's going to be. So if I put a 16 millimeter on this body, it's going to be a 16. A lot of cameras will multiply that by 1.5, 1.6. So if you put on a 16, a wide lens, it's now a 24, 25. So companies have gotten more and more into very wide lenses, 10s and things, which then are 16s or 17s for that very reason. Full frame's the way to go. These sensors are amazing. The quality is incredible. This is a 22 megapixel. It's now 30. The files are huge, but again, if you're doing any kind of enlargement, like we're blowing these up to 40 feet, the quality is just amazing. I've made gallery prints 20 by 30 inches, phenomenal quality. So for me, sensors are the most important thing. I thank you for that. I'm sorry I can't comment directly on the Sony, but that's my baby there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you're a professional and you go to Cuba, you have to pay away, pay this, pay it. How does that work out? What do you do with that? You're in Guatemala, you take pictures of all these people on the street and they really like it. They're not taking prints of it, they're not getting a hard drive, a thumb drive. I don't understand how that works.
In what regard?
How you survive,
How we get by?
living. Well, I mean,
No, it's a valid question.
you got flights and all
Sure.
expenses. How does that wash out?
Sure, the question is one of finances and economy, in that, photography is not cheap. The equipment's expensive, the flights are expensive, the hotels are expensive. Again, thanks to Harmony of the Seas for allowing me to just hang out here and truck me around the world. Very nice. But it is an expense, and well, at this point I'm very blessed, and I'm not in a situation, gratefully. I'm very frugal. I'm very frugal about it. But I do sell through galleries. My main project now is, again, I can't promote this, but I do want to share with you because it's something I'm very proud of. For 3.5 years, I worked on a project making high-resolution prints for sailboats and other wind-powered vessels, kite surfers, windsurfers, things like this. They're unique in the world. Big, beautiful art. We commissioned Cuban artists to use their work on the sails. We have a boat going down there in a month that's going to fly a painting by one of the local Cuban artists. I spent a lot of time securing contracts and photographing works of art down there. I'm very blessed in that for me now it can be, within reason, a wonderful artistic pursuit, and I'm able to make it work financially. But as a business, photography is tough. There's no doubt about it. People ask me that about themselves and about their children who love it. But you have to go with your heart. If that's what you love, that's what you love. A A lot of artists die broke. I'll probably die broke. That's all right. At least I'll have a lot of great images on a hard drive somewhere. Please remind my family to dig those hard drives out of the safe and make use of them, or I'll feel this whole time on this planet was all for naught. But like any art, it's true. You're asking a real world question as well. It is expensive and that you need to be able to fund it. It can be difficult to do. I'm very blessed by my mom to be in a position to be able to do that. As long as I'm frugal, I live a very simple life and I prefer that. That's what moved me out of San Francisco, again, which I love, but it moved me into an environment that I find much more humble, where I don't need a lot of things other than the gear. It seems like I have a lot of gear. I really don't have that much compared with a lot of people in this realm now. I try to keep it very simple and concentrate on equipment that I know well, that feels comfortable for me, and things that will quickly and immediately help me communicate what it is that I'm after, and leave it at that. My gear, I rarely change. I've had these lenses for 10 years. I've had the bodies for years. I'll treat myself to a new one because the new one just came out. But within reason, the rest of my life is rather simple, and that allows me to concentrate personally and emotionally on my art and to somehow skirt by so that I can fund it. Very good question, though. It's true. Art and finance is always two things, difficult to keep in balance. Well, again, thank you. I really want to thank you all again for your energy during this cruise. Thank you so much. And at 4 o'clock, we'll have a little class up there in the solarium bar. Thank you all for coming. Enjoy the rest of the cruise. Thanks so much.